I'm about 75% nerd, and I think I'll probably top off about a solid 80. There's something in me that won't let me go full nerd just because it's like too much. Like
the anime is the last step.
See, and the thing is with the anime is like there are some anime-ish shows that I've watched that I have enjoyed, and I think that I would enjoy anime. I feel like the last step is like figurines. I think that's roughly where I draw my line. It's like I'm not gonna have no bunch of figurines and shit in the house.
What is up? This is Teddy D, and I am excited to bring you yet another edition of Aaron Scratch That Teddy's Untitled interview show. Here's the deal. Aaron started this 2-3 years ago. Like the African American that he is, he still hasn't finished the project that he started, which was interview every member of the Black Astronauts Podcast Network one-on-one. Depending on when you listen to this, this may be the first or second one that you've heard, but today we have a special guest. That special guest is none other than the host / creator of possibly one of your favorite shows. One of mine. I love it. I'm a fan. I let the world know. She is from the state of Ohio, yet she resides in the state of Texas, Houston specifically. Houston, we have a problems host / creator. Miss, what's going on, man?
Hi, Teddy.
How you doing?
I feel like I want to like rip my warm-ups off and
let's go
run to center court where the logo is.
Yeah.
That's
so what's amazing what's amazing with that is that you started this interview by making a sports reference, and I just didn't see that coming. That's amazing. So thank you for surprising us all.
I do what I can.
All right, so today what we're going to do is try to get to know you a little better, get to know your backstory. Listeners have heard you on the millions of different shows that we have, and I'm sure that they picked up on your humor, your wit. You're really smart, and where I want to start is your nerdiness. I mean, so how long have you been a part of BAP, Black Astronauts Network?
We're almost at 2 years, I think.
Yeah, it's coming up pretty soon, actually.
If it hasn't already passed, it's been a minute. It feels like we've only been a part of it for like 6 months, but I'm starting to get the initial Black Astronauts podcast memories on my Facebook. So it's been at least a year or so. It's crazy.
Yeah. Shout out to that being the way that I remember every one of my life goals, or my life happenings, is by going on Facebook and like, oh, look what happened 3 years ago.
Right.
Know. How about that? So you've been almost 2 years a member of BAP, and in that time you have transformed from minimum to insignificant levels of nerdiness to now. I would say last time we checked in on your nerd level, you were right at 50%, half a nerd. Mm-hmm. You were kind of like the Blade of nerds. You know what I'm saying?
I like that.
And now I don't even know if there is a comparison. Like you might just be full blown.
I feel like I'm about 75% nerd, and I think I'll probably top off about a solid 80. There's something in me that won't let me go full nerd just because it's like too much. Like
the anime is the last step.
See, and the thing is with the anime is like there are some anime-ish shows that I've watched that I have enjoyed, and I think that I would enjoy anime. I feel like the last step is like figurines. I think that's roughly where I draw my line. It's like, I'm not going to have no bunch of figurines and shit in the house. Like, well, I have a couple of random nerdy reference things in the house. Like, if I was, I don't know, own a set of the Dragon Balls or, you know, Millennium Puzzle or some shit. Maybe. But like little people, man, it creeps me out. I watch Tales in the Hood and I think they're going to eat me when I'm asleep or something. It's not my thing.
That's a proven fact. All right. Well, listen, here's my question. I have a couple of questions here that I've been wanting to ask you, Ray. But one-on-one, I feel like this is a great opportunity. It's just you and I, so don't worry about the audience, okay?
Cool. We're here.
So podcasting. You have been a longtime fan as well. And dirty little secret for the group that we're a part of, not only BAP, but we're affectionately part of the larger group, which is like the Chitlin Circuit is what we've called it.
Yeah.
Black podcasting, if you will. If I had to put a percentage on it, I would say roughly, I don't know, maybe 40%. 40% of all the podcasters that you know and love aren't into podcasts.
Yeah, that surprised me. I don't know if it was just a me thing because I love podcasts. Like you said, I've been listening for years. So it's like, how do you, but I realize what it is that people are only interested in hearing themselves talk and they're not very interested in listening to other people talk.
Shout out to Fee. Yeah.
Hello.
Did I name names? I'm sorry.
But no, seriously, like when I was talking to people about like my podcast and like suggesting podcasts to people are like, oh yeah, I want to start a podcast. And I'm like, you don't even know what it is for real, but you just want to do one because you want for people to hear what you have to say. But you're not interested in listening to what other people have to say. You're not interested in doing the background and research. And again, this is probably a part of my nerdery where it's like before I do most of anything, I have to Google it intensely. Like I need to know as much as I possibly can about it. So for me, it's like people are like, oh, I want to start a podcast. And it's like, I mean, okay, but do you know what an RSS feed is? Do you know, like what a hosting site is? What's your Twitter going to be? What's your handle? Like all this other stuff. And they're just like, I mean, I'll just get on SoundCloud and just, upload my files and hopefully it'll be okay. And it's like, okay, sure.
Yeah. No, I say that because, and it's okay if you actually don't even start out as a fan of podcasting. I'm not judging anyone. I'm just making the observation that I can relate a lot more to you as a podcaster. We both do podcasting now because we came in similar ways, which is like, podcasting is dope. It gives people a voice. It shines light into issues that a lot of the traditional media really isn't talking about. You expose great music and all these exciting, not only conversations, but I really get excited about new podcasters that, have a different perspective than I do. Like all that. But, I the question I have for you is coming with that base. Now that you've been behind the scenes and you know how the sausage is made and you get a chance to meet some cool people in podcasting, people that you and I probably listened to before we started jumping upon the mic. What are your thoughts in general on the state of podcasting? I'm just curious to see whichever way you want to take it. What do you think about podcasting right now?
Well, I will be open to admit that I keep a pretty close circle in my podcast as far as like what I listen to. You, Teddy, know that I am like a true crime buff. So most of the time,
and the history one you try to get me on.
Oh my goodness. He hasn't done a new one of those in a long time. I'm gonna write a letter. But I think that the state of podcasting, it's in a really interesting place because the greatest thing about podcasting may be, I don't want to call it the downfall because I feel like I'm going to start sounding like Joe Budden and like hating on new people when they come in. But it's the same to me as like I feel like it has the potential to be like how producing is now. Where before there were only a few people who were producing, but now it's like if you can get a mic and a program, you can just produce your own podcast, which is the beauty of podcasting. That anybody can get out there and do it. But I'm happy to hear a new podcast. I'm part of that Black podcasters group on Facebook, and you know, whenever I get the opportunity to add somebody else to my feed, I do. But I feel like podcasting is in the place where it can be a big explosion because there's a lot of good content out there and people are getting on podcasting and understanding it. But then at the same time, it's a little bit of a precarious situation because, you know, people are starting to see that there's money and potential and notoriety in podcasting.
Right.
And so a lot of people will want to get on, and then it'll flood the market. You know, so it's one of those things where, to me, I'm kind of protective over podcasting, not only because I am like a podcaster, but also it's something that I started listening to podcasts in like 2009.
Yeah.
You know, like I listened to podcasts on my BlackBerry. So that's how you
Shout out to the BlackBerry.
Yeah,
wow.
like I listened. I was listening to it on my iPhone 3. Like, I've been listening to podcasts for a long time, and so for me, it's always kind of been like my little thing that I was in on, and like I would try and tell people about it. It's a part of my nerdery, I guess, where like everybody was kind of like, "Oh, that's whack. I don't want to hear that." And now everybody's on, and you looking at everybody like, "Huh, okay."
I've been here.
Okay, so you like that. You remember 6 years ago when I told you to listen? Okay, just want to check and make sure we was in the same place.
Right.
You know?
That's how I feel. That's how I feel when a lot of people go on these rants about, you know, people need to wake up and I'm woke, this and that. I'm like, bro, I've been here. Why aren't we?
Yeah.
You know, like I always compare people that have these enlightening moments, which I think are great. You know, more power to you. You just have to know how to stay in your lane too. Like, it's just like new believers. Like when somebody first accepts Christ in their life, they're really annoying. Nobody ever wants to say that, but
oh yeah, they're insufferable.
Super annoying. Like I'm just trying to, I'm just trying to say what's up to you. Don't quote Exodus, dog.
God is
So,
good.
like-
How are you, brother? I'm like, oh my God, okay.
Okay. I mean,
Fine.
I'm a Dairy Queen, bro. I just want a Blizzard. Like, leave me alone.
Right.
But like I think I while I enjoy seeing that level of excitement in podcasting, I'm curious as to what the future of it is going to be.
Well, I think what's going on, what I think is going to end up happening is that the people who are doing the podcast are going to realize like what really goes into having a podcast and building a network, and those people who aren't passionate about it are going to fall off, and they're not going to want to do it because it's a lot of hard work. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've been up way later than I was supposed to editing a show, or just anything, everything, texting Aaron, complaining to Aaron, yelling at Crystal, yelling at Lloyd, this is stupid, I can't believe this is happening, and then the consistency that goes into it. Like, I feel like if you don't really have a passion for it, it seems simple at first, but then when you can't go and do something because you got to get this episode out when you were supposed to, the episode's supposed to come out tomorrow, but I gotta edit all this background noise because somebody couldn't turn down their TV, or just anything. Like, the lots of little annoying stuff that comes up in podcasting will eventually make the weak ones drop. Like, if they're not really passionate about it, they're not going to want to do it because it is not simple, it's not easy, and by God, it's not cheap.
Right, that's right. Please add that. Please add that. But that to me is also an example of why I think it was a great idea for you to start podcasting. And we've told the story before on the main show, as well as HWAP. You've mentioned it, and even on mine when you came on. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
We talked about it. But for the people who haven't heard, how did you get started in podcasting?
I got started in podcasting. The story is 7 years long, honestly. I ended up bumping into Aaron. We ended up reuniting after long years of being apart because Aaron's super old, and so. We ended up bumping into each other, and I found out about his podcast, and he knew that I was a listener and everything like that. And just through following me on social media, this was maybe back in like 2010, maybe, he's like, you should start a podcast. You're really entertaining. You'd like it. You should just join my network. And I'm like, no, I don't know. I don't think so. No, thanks. And so that went on for years. When I say years, like there was a Facebook memory that popped up like from 4 years ago where it was like, people tell me I should start a podcast, but I don't know. I think I'm like, there's Aaron in the comments grumbling, like just come on over to death row, nigga. Like, really. And so about 2 years ago, I was like, you know what? I should start a podcast. So I hit up Aaron and I'm like, so I was thinking that I should do a podcast and I should do it with my friend Lloyd and my friend Crystal. It'd be great. And he was like, yeah, okay, nigga, buy this, and give me a call on Skype. And that's kind of how it happened. Like,
nice.
We've been rolling ever since.
I love it with HWAP. And the format of the show, the two co-hosts, like how did you create that? Like what made Lloyd and Crystal stand out that you wanted them to be the other part of the show?
Well, Lloyd was okay. So there was a time, this is probably 5 years ago, where I was at Lloyd's house and she was braiding my hair, and I talked her into listening to the read, and she absolutely loved it. And so she was like braiding my hair or something like that. And she probably still has the recording on her phone somewhere, but we recorded us talking about Beyonce. And so she'd always been kind of down with the idea of doing a podcast, but of course she didn't know the technical stuff of it, and that of course would have fallen on me because I'm the one who would know that type of thing. So when I finally came around to the idea of doing a podcast, it was just like, okay, well, obviously Lloyd, because she's going to be down, and then there needed to be somebody else to kind of balance us out, because like me and Lloyd are very, very similar. We're mean bitches. We don't like anything. We hate everybody. And if we were to do a show, it would be awful. And so I thought, okay, well, who would be another person who can balance us out in the sense of, would have similar opinions to us so that we're not arguing all the time, but not so similar that they can't bring another something to the podcast. And so I thought of Crystal, because she already had her YouTube video. She was, YouTube famous. And so she knows about consistency and putting out content and the importance of your content being good and original and stuff like that. So those were conversations that I didn't have to have with her.
Right.
She was basically podcasting, but, through another medium. So it just was like, okay, well, I know Crystal would be down. If she says yes, then we on. And so she said, yeah. And it was what it was. And
it's been on. It's been on. And I asked Crystal this before as well, and I ask you, how do you feel about where the show is right now?
It's weird, because when I think about the fact that the show has been out for about 2 years, it still surprises me that people listen. Like when people email, I'm always genuinely surprised. I'm like, somebody was listening. Like when people like,
shout out to Ashley, Pam, what up?
Yeah, Ophi. It's just like, because of course Aaron's like, oh, it was a great show, because he wants me to keep doing the show. Of course you're going to say it was a great show because you want me to do the show, and you're not going to tell me it sucked. But to me,
because I enjoy the show.
Yeah, but I don't know. For me, I was just always like, at the end of every episode, I'm like, I don't know about this one. And then I listen to it again. I'm like, oh, this is fine. But before, I couldn't believe that people listen to it. Now we have like people who write into the show. I wouldn't say constantly, but they write in relatively often. There's people who have come out and said like the reason why I've joined Patreon is to support HWAP, not BAP. And I'm like, I know, right? So, it's crazy to me for me to think that like there are people out here who want to listen to me and my two crazy ass friends talk about something and nothing all at the same time.
Yeah, y'all entertaining. I get it. I definitely get it. So, the other thing I wanted to touch on with podcasts before we move on is you mentioned that you were a fan of podcasts. Could you name some of the podcasts that you listen to now that's in your smaller rotation, so we can shout them out and get an idea about some of the motivations that you get?
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna name some of them. Most of them are gonna be true crime podcasts, because I recently, with the update, I had to update my phone, and so it updated with all of my old podcasts. So I have to go back and add some more in. But of course, there's the obvious ones like The Black Guy Who Tips, What's the Tea? Unreasonable Fridays is another one of my favorites. As far as another obsession that I have is like recaps of TV shows that I watch. So like right now I'm listening to a RuPaul's Drag Race recap. That's one of my favorite TV shows. And then on their Patreon, they're recapping the previous season. So I've been listening to that. Of course, there's the Why Not podcast.
Hey.
Clearly. There's one called Paychecks and Balances. I won't even get into that because Teddy.
Listen, I wasn't even going to badge you tonight. I mean, we can, but go ahead.
And then there is Common Sense with Dan Carlin. And he also has Hardcore History because I'm a big history buff. And then as far as true crime, it's like Breakdown, Heaven's Gate, Court Junkie, Dark Topic, Insight, In the Dark, Serial, Generation Y, Sword and Scale, The Vanished, Thin Air, True Crime Garage, True Crime Guys, Unpopular Culture, Up and Vanished. Like, it's
wow.
And that's that's what I have in my phone right now. But I'm definitely adding more because I'm starting to run. Like, I listen to it all day, so I'm starting to run out of shows. So if you guys have some suggestions, just tweet me. Let me know.
Yeah, that's actually me too. I need some good suggestions myself. So please get at us. All right. So the podcasting aside, you are currently living in the city of Houston, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And if anyone's seen any news coverage in the last month, actually a month and a half, something like that, you've seen not only the devastation that happened in Houston, but of course Puerto Rico, Florida, and a couple of other parts, but specifically Houston got hit really hard. I know that affected you and you had to leave your apartment for a little bit, but all things considered, things were okay, which we were grateful of. But talk about not only your change from moving from, you were in school in Cincinnati, right? All right, shout out to UC, the Bearcats. And your move from there to Houston, Texas. What was that like, and how's it been?
It's been an adventure. It's one of the. It was just like it was very impromptu. You can actually ask Lloyd. Like, I've been talking to my sister, and I was like, I need to get out of Ohio. I just need to leave. I can't do it. And my sister had already moved down to Houston because our family had slowly been kind of like transitioning down to Houston. We had already kind of had roots through a family member of mine who had been down here for years. And so some of us had already moved down there. And then, of course, this is my sister who's 2 years older than me. So we're, ace boom coons. And so she's like, and then she has my nephew. And then at that time she was pregnant again. And she's like, well, you should just come down here with me and the kids. And I'm like, well, okay, yeah, sure. Seems like a great idea. And so, I mean, I told everybody it was like 2 months. In like 6 weeks, I'm moving to Houston. So,
okay.
So, okay. And everybody was just kind of like, oh my God, like what? And everybody was super confused. The move down here was awful. Like, you know how it's just like the worst. Like when you look back and you're just like, these were the worst 2 years of my life. Oh my God. I would say maybe like the year before I moved to Houston and then the year after I moved to Houston, easily the worst 2 years of my life. It was, it was terrible. Like right before I was supposed to move to Houston, like I had all of my stuff in the car. It was in my hometown, kicking with my family before I was supposed to leave, get into a
Which hometown is this, by the way?
Dayton, Ohio.
Shout out to Dayton.
I mean, no, not real, but they're my peoples. I had like everything in my car, like all this stuff packed up, got into a car because it totaled my car. Like, and that's how I was supposed to be driving down there. So then my family was like, just come on down anyway, you get yourself a new car or whatever. So I just like, I packed the bag. I probably about $500 in 2 suitcases and moved to Houston. And then from there, it was just, okay.
I'm here.
All right. So make it happen. And I did. It wasn't fun. It wasn't easy, but real niggas do real things.
That's all you gotta say, dog. You good.
I'm good.
Now, listen, I want to get into a fairly serious and important topic.
Oh, Lord.
I want to take advantage of having you here and, just speaking so freely about your podcast journey. One thing that I do want to know about is, how do you feel about the members of BAP, and let me just remind you who they are. Feek Blerdman, of course, myself, and we have CY, young CY. I guess we can throw Aaron in there. That's fine. and of course HWAP, and then as well as AJ, who joins Feek on Married to Shade. So what are your thoughts? Because I want to give people a feel for not only you, but how we view one another and work together at least once a week, if not more.
Mm-hmm.
So what thoughts do you have on our staff, if you will?
So let me tell y'all about these niggas, okay? No, everybody on the podcast, they my people, all in, different type of ways. Me and CY, we talk all the time, play Xbox together. He's King Shing Shing. He knows what that means.
Okay.
Yeah, and no, he'll definitely appreciate the fact that I even brought it up on the podcast. And now
Nice.
He won't appreciate it because I told him he'd appreciate it. Let's see. Chris and Lloyd, of course. I mean, we got the shadiest group text of all time. Matter of fact, before we started recording, I sent them a picture of somebody we went to school with. As far as Aaron, he is still full on with encouraging me to do things and then abandoning me in the middle of them. Shout out to AA Ron.
Right.
Oh, this is so fun. I get the opportunity to talk shit about everybody. I can't.
That's right.
So excited.
They can't do anything.
Feek is Feek. And that's all I can really say about that. I've learned to accept Feek for who he is a long time ago. AJ, even though we want to love her, I'm pretty sure she hates us. Like, we have nothing but good things to say about AJ, and she just kind of comes in and is like, niggas, greetings, peasants.
Next.
Who am I missing? Oh, CJ. I love CJ. CJ's great. She's the only one that's halfway decent out of everybody on the network. Everyone else is shit. And then let me tell you about this Teddy. Let me tell you about Teddy. Okay.
So now that we've covered everybody, that's all well and good. Sticking with the questions that the former host of the show used to ask, what advice do you have for new podcasters? Mm-hmm. And if someone says that they want to start to podcast, what's an example of what you would tell that person?
I would say let's see, what was the first question? What advice would I give to a new podcaster?
Yeah, what advice would you give to a new podcaster? Again,
I would say that the advice that I would give a new podcaster is two things. First of all, set a schedule that you can be consistent with. Make sure that if it's going to be you and other people, make sure that they are down to be consistent on the schedule, because one thing that can and will break a podcast listener base is inconsistency. There's been plenty of podcasts that I've listened to that I enjoy that sometimes I back off of because they don't come out consistently enough and they're taking up the memory on my phone. I got an iPhone, I can't just slide in no extra chip. Can't be having you bogarting all the space on my phone if you're not gonna bring nothing out. And there's some shows that are good enough that people will wait. Like, I still am waiting around for Freshly and Sir Ratchetness to come back with their podcast. They haven't dropped an episode in a year, but I just hold on, hoping that one day I'll be blessed. So I would definitely say make sure that you can keep your consistency on point. And then the other thing is, whatever you're going to do for your podcast, have something that's going to set you apart from everybody else. I'm genuinely not a person to tell somebody not to chase their dreams, to, if you want to start a podcast, don't believe when people say the market is oversaturated and everybody has a podcast. So the fuck what? Rihanna came out with a makeup line when everybody had a makeup line. So, it's no big deal. Don't worry about what other people are doing, but you do need to have something that sets you apart, because a lot of people, again, will come on and they want to do a podcast and they want to talk about relationships and pop culture. But what are you bringing to the conversation that they can't get anywhere else? And whether that's a
unique take, right?
Whether it's a you thing or, it's just a personality type of thing. I can't really say, one way or the other, but you do definitely need to offer something that other people cannot offer, because everybody thinks they're funny. Everybody thinks they're interesting. Mm-hmm. Everybody is not.
Yeah, no, that's legitimately true. Shout out to all the upper management giving horrible speeches that they think are funny, by the way. Stop doing that to your workers. All right. I like what you're doing. I like what you're doing here. One last thing I want to do before we actually get out of here is talk about, one thing that I think you brought up, and it had been on purpose, but Talk to me about what you see as your next step in podcasting.
One thing that I've been dragging my heels on is a personal finance podcast. Personal finance is like a hobby of mine. It's honestly low-key kind of an obsession of mine. It occupies my time. It occupies my brain. Like all I do is sit around and create spreadsheets like I'm out of my mind. But I want to start a personal finance podcast, and I want to do one that is just like for people who are broke. Like a lot of when I was getting into personal finance and stuff like that, a lot of the information that I came across, you know, kind of started out as like, okay, so you have this extra $1,000 a month and you want to know what to do with it. And I'm like, no. No.
Don't you put that on me. Don't you put that bad juju on me.
Like, no. I have a negative bank account, nothing in savings, and some change in my ashtray. What can you start me off with? So that's one of the things that I wanted to do, was to start a personal finance podcast. But of course, you amongst a ton of other people who have been telling me that I need to start it. I'm one of those people. Have you ever taken the personality test, the Myers-Briggs personality test?
I think now is that to be confused with the strong test? Is that the one that labels you into which colors?
No, I haven't done. I don't remember what color I got for that. But the Myers-Briggs personality test is like when they give you letters and you're like EJNT or something like that.
Right. Okay.
My personality trait was, my personality was like ISTP. And one of first of all, that if you want somebody to tell you about yourself and to get all in your business, read that, take that quiz and let that quiz tell you about yourself. But one of the characteristics is that I have a tendency to have a lot of projects and juggle a lot and be doing a lot all the time. And so with the personal finance podcast, for me, it's one of those things where it's like, it's something that's important to me and I want it to be done right. And I want it to be, I want it to be helpful. I don't want to be just another person out here telling you, what everybody else knows, or, telling you to save your money and everything like that. So that'll probably be my next move. I want to tell y'all to tweet me to make me do it, but y'all leave me alone. I'm going to do it. I promise I'm going to do it. I was sending out some text messages and stuff today, but that's probably going to be my next move, is teaching people, even if it's not teaching people personal finance, just kind of pointing them in the right direction. And so I'm like, this is where you should look, because if you lose all your money, don't look at me. I ain't got no money neither, bruh. So we both gonna be out here empty pockets together. That's all I'm saying.
That's it. Well, look, Ray, I appreciate it. You've done a great job, and I think the people have gotten to know you a little bit better. If they wanted to get to know you on these social media streets, where can they find you? You can find me mostly just retweeting on Twitter.
You can at least see what I find to be interesting or funny. I would say add me on Facebook. Maybe follow me on Facebook. I just, some family that's on there, but that's where I spend most of my time nowadays. I'm getting old.
Get out of here.
You might
know your audience.
You can find me on Snapchat, ThisZetasAJerk. Just look up ThisZetasAJerk on all social media, and if I'm there, I'll pop up. I don't think anybody else has that name. So
I think you're good. Well, as always, I appreciate it. You and HWAP are doing an incredible job.
Thank you.
We are losing you to the nerds, but that's fine. CJ and I will hold it down.
You'll never completely lose me. On Wednesdays, we'll still wear pink.
We got Lloyd.
See, you know what? Y'all aren't gonna do me like this, okay? Y'all aren't gonna just treat me like a social leper, okay? Like, I am like, what is his name with the scale AIDS on Game of Thrones? What's his name? Oh,
you're Jorah.
Yeah, y'all. I'm not completely covered in grayscale just yet. Don't do me like
dragon
that.
AIDS, dog.
Yeah, like it's spreading a little bit, and y'all can't touch me, but I can still sit with y'all. Don't do me like that.
and on that note, yet another great guest for another episode of Aaron Scratch That, Teddy's Untitled interview show. Much appreciated, family, and we'll get y'all next show. Peace.